All righty. Looks like audio is working. This is policing, and we're about 5 minutes out. I'm gonna write that right here so I can see it whenever I upload. It's policing 5. So if you started initially, we're about 5 minutes from start time. Get this going. Admit all. Oh, I see a couple of my usually attending in-person people coming online. So I might be in the room by myself. I'm gonna be lonely. Not really. I talk to myself just as fine. All right, let's see here. Next up, so we're policing 5 minutes out. I'm going to see about today. Ooh, I didn't make that available. I need to make that available. Let's do that and change that timeline first. I just realized we did a review last time, and I haven't made that available or make the test available yet. So let's make that available. Admit that's going to be, say, Wednesday. That's going to be an extra couple of days. Wednesday, that's going to be the 25th. Think. And make it available. 90 minutes. Deadline. Boop. Submit. Show link. And we'll also change it within the test description. All right. Admit. Let's say right here. 1, 2, 3. Wednesday, the 25th. Cool. Submit. All right. And then I add in content area, chapter 5. And one divider. All right. Going out. Download that one. That's the right one. Take a look. Admit all. There we go. It's recruitment, that kind of a thing. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. Recruiting. So the first one's a bit spiritual. I like that. Okay, cool. All right, 2 minutes. I will be right back. I'm going to go get some water. It is now 10:02, so we're 2 minutes into class. So it took me a little bit longer than I expected. And we'll let the rest of everybody in here. So we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, including me. That's not bad. All right. So here we are. We're going to start talking about hiring practices and all that kind of stuff and the nature of policing a little bit. Not we haven't been discussing that already. Let's see. So I'm just thinking about this. I think what I want to do, since it starts out talking a little about the nature of policing, in terms of the different perspectives that people bring with them, the different mentalities to some degree. I'm going to show you something that's an oldie but a goodie, and probably most of you haven't ever seen this. Maybe some of you have. We'll start out with showing you this. Let me find this real quick, because this is one that it kind of speaks to the same thing that they're going to be talking about here when they start talking about, so this is chapter 5, recruitment training for a changing society. So that's why, since we're talking a little bit about society, we'll hit that with some of the me. When we start talking about guardians versus warriors and that kind of stuff, we'll talk about that. Here, let me do this real quick. And we're going to do, afterwards, I'm a little curious. I'll ask you guys to see if you guys have ever seen this before, because this will be a short clip. I won't watch any specific video, because that'll probably be that music video. I popped up one time here. We need to pull up Dragnet. Look at that. It even popped up first thing. Here it is, a 3-minute thing. This should get it across. All right, so this is an oldie. Okay, Sergeant Joe Friday. So this is Dragnet. Let's see how loud this thing is. Might turn it up, and I might have to turn it down as we go.
Hey, Dr. Hurst, none of us can hear the video.
Can't hear it?
Free Sundays,
That's
holidays.
sad.
No, sir.
None of you can hear it? That's so sad. Thank you for speaking up. Can't hear the video. Can anyone else? Nope, apparently not. All right, well, we'll start because it's only a couple minutes. You need to, well, yeah, you probably need to hear it because of what he's speaking to. Kind of speaks to the nature of this. We'll back it up a little bit. How loud can I make? I'm gonna have to shut the door because if I turn it up any louder, actually, I don't know if it will go any louder. Let's see here. If it doesn't go any louder, what I'll do is I'll bring the speakers. Gonna give me the speakers. Okay, sound output. Nothing there. Okay, so that speaker doesn't work. Let's see. Echo canceling. We'll try that one. Okay, can you guys hear that?
Go ahead and try playing the video real quick. We'll see if we can hear it.
College man, she'd like to have seen you landed.
Yep, you can hear it better.
All right. So on the scale, would you say that that's loud enough or too loud?
I think it's fine.
There's some other classes here. I know that would probably be a little too loud. I'll leave the door open.
The job with a little more status attached, is that it? I guess that's part of it, but not all of it. I think maybe I can understand how she feels. And maybe she's right, Culver. It's awkward having a policeman around the house. Friends drop in, a man with a badge answers the door. The temperature drops 20 degrees. You throw a party and that badge gets in the way. All of a sudden, there isn't a straight man in the crowd. Everybody's a comedian. Don't drink too much, somebody says, and the man with a badge will run you in. Or how's it going, Dick Tracy? How many jaywalkers did you pinch today? And then there's always the one who wants to know how many apples you stole. All at once, you lost your first name. You're a cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news. They call you everything, but never a policeman. Maybe she's right. There's not much of a life unless you don't mind missing a Dodger game because the hotshot phone rings. Unless you like working Saturdays, Sundays, holidays at a job that doesn't pay overtime. Oh, the pay's adequate. If you count your pennies, you can put your kid through college. But you better plan on seeing Europe on your television set. And then there's your first night on the beat. When you try to arrest a drunken prostitute in a Main Street bar and she rips your new uniform to shreds, you'll buy another one out of your own pocket. And you're going to rub elbows with all the elite. Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care. Liars, cheats, con men, the class of Skid Row. And the heartbreak. Underfed kids, beaten kids, molested kids, lost kids, crying kids, homeless kids, hit and run kids, broken arm kids, broken leg kids, broken head kids, sick kids, dying kids, dead kids. The old people that nobody wants, the relievers, the pensioners, the ones who walked the street cold, and those who tried to keep warm and died in a $3 room with an unvented gas heater. You'll walk your beat and try to pick up the pieces. Do you have real adventure in your soul, Culver? You better have, because you're going to do time on a prowl car. Oh, it's going to be a thrill a minute when you get an unknown trouble call and hit a backyard at 2 a.m, never knowing who you'll meet. A kid with a knife, a pillhead with a gun, or 2 ex-cons with nothing to lose. And you're going to have plenty of time to think. You'll draw duty in a lonely car with nobody to talk to but your radio. 4 years in uniform, you'll have the ability, the experience, and maybe the desire to be a detective. If you like to fly by the seat of your pants, this is where you belong.
Dora, you have just
Okay, that's enough of that. What are your guys' thoughts? It's over here. Stop sharing. Guys ever seen that before?
Yeah.
I got at least one, probably two people who've seen the old Dragnet before, yes? No. Good. If you've not seen it, sound off, because I want to be aware of that a little bit, so I get an idea for
That was one of the videos they showed us in my A school when we became military police officers.
yeah, because there's a few different tones there. It's one of those things it's really, really interesting whenever I've heard of it, but never watched. Okay, good. It's one of those things that depictions are always really, really interesting, because what comes through in that is so many, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's very true. Same thing with stories. And so, like, when you look at that, what you get from that is a number of different elements coming in to kind of frame what policing is for people in that age. And to what degree that's changed, to what degree that remains the same, and how much society has changed across time, and how all of those things kind of flux together is kind of what we get at here before we can even really start talking about how the jobs have started to change, career selection, that kind of stuff. Because that's how you try to institute or adapt to society is it's going to be something that's going to work through the organization over time. And that's not an easy process. It's something that as you deal with organizations, you'll find that they are very, very resistant to change if they're working, right? They don't want to change because what they were doing was working to some degree. As things change, things get better or worse. So we'll talk about that a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about there is a little bit about the roles and mindsets associated. So in this textbook, I think they talked about it a little bit in an earlier chapter. They might talk about it again in a later chapter, because they bounce around between topics a lot, just like any of us. But here they talk about it in terms of guardian versus warriors mentality. This talks about old issues, new challenges. So about history, role of history, and how it builds. Current time is based off of history. If you want to unbind yourself from it, it's like, welcome to free fall. You don't want to have that. You need to build it, but realize what you're building from. In this one, you've got warrior versus guardian mindset is what you're talking about. At other points in times, they'll start talking about it from like a social worker kind of perspective. That's kind of start thinking about the perspectives of those involved in these processes, right? So you have to think about, well, broad brush stroke, everybody involved, and that's literally everybody. Here you're going to have the whole separation between public, as in the actual public, and then the. I need to turn that on to silent in just a second. So you'd have the public, the government, criminal justice system itself, and this offshoot. Turn this on. Silent, thank you. All right. And so each of these people are going to have different perspective, depending on whether you're in them or not, of course. But since we're talking about people who are trying to go into policing, we're going to deal with this group. We'll talk about this group. And to some degree, we'll talk about, the organizations involved a little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit. You got these perspectives here across those different people: positive, neutral, negative, right? Whenever you're dealing with police, usually you'll find one of those three opinions. View favorably, disfavorably, or they don't care. That's most things. And so it's a really easy way to start to classify those things. And so if you look at this, to some, the social worker is both positive and negative. Guardian is always kind of positive. Warrior is both positive and negative kind of thing. And so you kind of look at it that way to some degree. What you have here is the sense of duty that people bring with them whenever they come into this career, the type of job they think that they're going to be doing. So it's somewhat of a clash in terms of expectations versus reality. That's a very, very common one in this field. The more you do it, the more different areas you touch, the additional areas, different things that you get involved in. That difference between expectation and reality starts to shift quite a bit. And to some degree, it's like this mentality here is to some degree bound across time. So you're dealing with what's old and what's established, what has worked. And so things get difficult. As society changes overall, this is a system that tries to some degree, feed off of it directly too. Right? As we're trying to address social issues here, think of the different ways that we do. Some of it's in that directly, as in you're doing the police work. Some of it will actually be tied into this organizational stuff too. It's like, you look at the number of people who are on the streets, yeah, it's about 80% of any given time of any organization. 80% of its officers will be tied into like patrol or some type of corps. If you look at those tied into the organizational side, that's going to be about 20% of that people in the organization, the employee. It's like they still do stuff too, and what they do is they fit in the middle kind of thing, doing different roles. Organizations do not want to change because there are so many people involved. There are so many processes. Well, if I said red tape, you all know exactly what I mean. How many loopholes, how many hoops do you have to jump through? How many loopholes do you have to fall through before you can find your way to get to doing the job that you're supposed to be doing kind of thing, or to get the change in that needs to be instituted, that kind of thing. It's the same across, whether you're trying to do your job in the standard way, where you're trying to adapt to change, or you're changing the organization itself, same kind of birds you face. But also I want to say before moving into the next part. Social worker side, guardian versus warriors mentality. Yes, I want to talk about duty and what people expect. So part of this is can be bound to this. So keep that in the back of your mind. There's some concepts that we don't always address directly in society. In our society, this is one of them. We got honor. We have it in our society, but we don't deal with it as directly as other societies, and sometimes in some ways. But this is one where you'll find people come into this job because of the problems there and the motivation to fulfill this. There's something there that's needed, some help that's needed, and people want to go into this. Usually, sometimes, maybe want to help. And so, heard that beep like someone's there, but I don't see anyone showing up. Someone must be having connectivity issues, maybe. So, some people want to help. Some people are going to be coming in just for specific for the opportunity to harm. And at minimum, if you have, so those who want to help, you'll have those who want to harm. Most people kind of fit in the middle. They're trying to figure things out, kind of thing. That's in most organizations. And then realize that, yeah. I thought I heard something. Maybe I didn't. Okay. And so you kind of got that going on. So how is it we address societal shift, the police themselves, and the people who want to do the job? How can we get those things aligned? Because that's not the same thing, right? We've got policing as a whole, the people who want to do the job, and then we have everyone who needs the job done, and everyone else who's associated too, right? And so at any one point in time, there's going to be a whole lot of things you have to consider if you're going to be in an organization. And well, if you're going to look at it from the perspective of hiring and hiring practices and policies, procedures, that kind of stuff, or if you're going to look at it as from the, I'm coming from the street trying to get the job, or if I'm trying to get the job that gets me to the street kind of thing. Yeah. Next thought. Let's see what this thing says. Embodied warrior mentality, military style of approaching to police. They need to develop a guardian mentality. So basically what it is it's crime fighters, right? You've got a very, very real need here. And sometimes that's to stop some bad people from doing bad things. They're also members of the public too. And so it's like you have to kind of account for that in your treatment for them. Maybe is what they're trying to get across, but they don't do it very well. That's why they're focused here. At the same time, you are going to have to draw off over here for good or ill. And with what you're doing, you're definitely going to have to be over here too. Because if you don't, the people you're handling, they need that too. And so at any one point in time, the number of roles that you have are in conflict. There'll be a section here where it talks about role conflict. They probably talked about it earlier in the first couple of sections. But when it talks about the role itself, the job itself, they'll start talking about that more specifically. Here, so guardianship is more what it is. Yeah. That one's really funny because if you think about it, it's a correlate for like your rights in general. If you think about your ability to use force against people, it's the same kind of lines here. It's just these are the only people who are really authorized to act on behalf of someone else, kind of thing. Whenever you do it to your own peril, even when you protect yourself, but you still have that right, kind of thing. And it's only for protection. If you go into offense, then you're the criminal. You can guard your stuff. You can guard your family to some degree. You can guard yourself. That guardian action will look just like this one in the actual moment, if you think about it, though. So the overlaps here are heavy. Okay. New workforce crisis, 3 serious threats. It says here, I might share the screen for a little bit. You can run through this because the PowerPoint itself it's useful, but I use it more as a guide for conversation. There's it here. Share screen. So it talks about career perspective here. And it mentions fewer people are applying for jobs, an increasing number of officers are resigning early, and a growing number of officers become eligible for retirement. That's time. Okay. So realize the different groups you're dealing with here. Just in those three statements. So you have potential officers. You have quitting, retiring soon. That's kind of what they're outlining there, right? Fewer people are applying. This by another name, whenever you get into the actual hiring processes for it. You guys might have had some experiences like that with some jobs that you've had where you've ever had anybody and got to interview anybody for that. Same kind of thing here, to some degree. But you're dealing with this word right here. Your pool, your applicant pool, your candidates pool, that kind of thing. We'll talk about this process and we'll overlap with this so you can see where some of those flaws are. Okay. In terms of increasing pressures in society that's changing this thing. Why is this thing decreasing? Why is your candidate pool decreasing? Why are few people applying for this job? Any ideas?
Negative perception of police in the past decade due to officer-involved shootings.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You just heard a video outlining exactly what that job is. When you hear that job, that sounds like an absolute shit job. I'm gonna have to sacrifice what now? Oh, and I'm gonna have to sacrifice what now? And then I'm gonna have to sacrifice what now? Oh, and then my goal is I'm gonna sacrifice something else. I don't like this job. Why is it so negative? It's because you're the one who's balancing society to some degree, if you're doing it right. Right? What are you doing? You're sacrificing your time and your energy, your resources, your uniform, your money, your life. And people expect it to be so much so that they'll expect you to directly jeopardize your life, even whenever they wouldn't do it the same themselves. They're going to hold you to a different standard, always. That's an interesting thing right there. Why would you want to go into this field? Someone's going to try to kill you, maybe. You know they'll hate you right off the bat. Why? Because you're trying to do something that needs to be done, and it's something that's good, and it's something that's right. And they don't want to see it done for some reason, whatever that reason is. Somebody doesn't. This thing right here. For the last generation or two, we've not been talking about that very much. Anecdotal kind of thing. Unspoken lessons are the most essential. They're also the most easily forgotten. We don't speak about them at some point. They're easily overlooked. That's going to be this one right here, and it's overlapped with this word right here. And it's going to be its overlap with this word right here. Here, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger since I'm probably really small and you might have some trouble reading that. No, maybe nope, I didn't. I moved it over here. I hate being split between so many screens. Here we go. Now you can see that a little bit. It's this thing right here called duty, maybe honor in society. It is a very honorable thing to sacrifice of oneself for the benefit of others. It's so rare that some people don't even see it anymore. They don't know what it is. That if you're moving something against your own interest, that you're doing something dumb, maybe, is what people tend to look at it as. You need to do what's smart. I love it whenever I encounter something that's a situation that's smart versus what's right. Why? Because whoever's involved, someone in there is going to be stupid, right? That's going to be me, because I'm going to do what's right. Okay, let's see. Videos were almost all local police officers in the cities designed due to pay and budget cuts. Yeah, pay and budget cuts are going to cite because that makes it evil. It's about money. It's not about money. It's about support. You'll see it in the money too. It's always about support. It'd be like talking about give me some faith and some room to move in a job, and I'll show you the value of that far exceeds any dollar figure you'll put to that position. All right, that'll you guys too as you move forward into things. You can take the learning, you move forward with this in mind. This is the next part. It's actually this thing that everyone should be focused in on. They usually are. Responsibility. But you need to have it over time for consistency. Right? has nothing to do with this word right here, control. You have anyone who focuses in on that? That's your first indication that might be a problem, right? Society focuses in on that all of the time. That's why society has some problems, right? Maybe it's because people are trying to do that. Maybe it's because they're so concerned with that kind of a thing. Who is responsible for what? That's the problem here, right? Because you're going to see that shift around this thing alone. So we have societal shift that is taking place all the time. It's always moving. I don't know how else to describe that. It's like you guys are alive, you guys move around, you're part of society. Obvious. As things change, as your lives change, and they change together because everything's connected to some degree, you're going to have some type of change here. Right? Most notably in our society in the last 60 years, what's changed? What do you guys think? You mentioned it there a little bit. Budget cuts and that kind of thing. Money always changes, right? It's something that is completely unstable, lacks all sense of stability since the 1970s. That's a different thing. Technology, that's a huge one. That one has exploded, right? So you got technology that's going to affect everything from communications to people's sight to everything, right? What you see today in terms of society is real, in so much as it's different people's perspectives being presented to you. Sometimes they're so real that they take off, and there's something that creates something, whether positive or negative, creates a movement kind of thing. That's like Rodney King in the 1990s, the first videotaped police beating of an unarmed black man. Ooh, race riots, huge issue in present, undeniable because of this thing. Yeah. You've had the shifts in change, changes in populations across places, across times. You've had the shifts in people's ideas, their beliefs, their educations, all kinds of things. This thing's all over the place. We just talk demographics. That's probably the easiest to deal with because it's the most visible. I can look at someone and make a snap judgment what I think that they are. Right? That's one of the reasons why racism exists. I can see you look a little different. I might make a judgment on that. That's wrong to do, but people do it. What do we do in response over here in this organization? We're going to look at those things and then we're going to make other decisions off of it. Right? Most obvious one as of the last 20 years is trying to get your society and your organization itself to be reflective of one another. That's the whole damn point, right? We want our systems to be representative of its people. And if we can't do it in the most obvious way visible, then we're not doing it right. Well, that's true from one point of view, one perspective. Long-term perspective, really, if you really want to get into that one. That one's one where we've accounted for all other issues too, right? We don't do that. We make that one the prime one because you can see it. That's politics. That's more about visibility. How visible is something, right? Policing is very visible. That's where it ties in. Okay. So in this, if I'm going to have a change to account for this societal shift and this new need, this one we'll say it's a legitimate need. Sometimes they are legitimate, sometimes they're not. That's a different thing. That's going to be leadership within an organization, and that kind of thing. Does it work or does it not eventually? That's also a time thing. You make a change and it's successful and improves things, great. You make it worse, ooh, it's not so good. This one, we have a legitimate thing. We want society and the organization itself to be reflective. How well can a police force interact with a population if its culture completely clashes with its people of that area, those under its jurisdiction? That doesn't work either. So we've got to find a way to balance it. Right? So realize What will you do if you're going to do about it in the best way possible? You're trying to do the best thing that you can in the best way. Well, I don't know. This is a field where it's always rife with contradictions. That's why I like them so much. If I said, name me any congressional act, like by its actual given name, name me any, I'll just stop with congressional act. That's probably the easiest one. I've got three on the top of my mind. Safe streets, patriot, and freedom, right? Both of those things had the inverse effect because they didn't account for all the different things that they were touching to some degree. Or maybe they did. I don't know. But they do cause some harm, so, which is why they have that negative criticism. Here, we're going to try to address this issue as best we can. So, what's the easiest way to address your police force does not represent the people under its jurisdiction?
Said how to change if the police force doesn't represent.
Yeah. So let's say it's something
Recruitment.
like Ferguson, Missouri. They should be doing this. I probably are. I don't know. I've not been following them since Michael Brown back in 2014, 16, wherever the heck that was.
Like you wrote on the board, like I said, a recruitment, trying to
It's in the hiring process.
hire more people that reflect the community that it serves.
Exactly. Right. So you look at your processes within the organization to see what things can change. It's really hard to change people. It's really easy to change the process. Right? Organizations don't really like to change because people are involved with those processes, that kind of a thing. So you go over here to the hiring side. Right? And let's say we'll get specific. We'll say it's 10:30. Okay, we'll have some fun with this one. Okay, we'll say it's, let's erase this. You're at the center part. Okay. Say group 1, group 2, group 3. 50, 40, 10. This one's society. Your police force is, we'll say 80, 10, and 5. Right? What am I saying here? In society, for this fictitious town, we have 3 groups of people, 3 different cultures. I'll use race as a proxy because that's what I do. I don't think race really matters anymore. I think it's better a measure for culture than it is anything, and it's not a really good one for that. It's just the best one we have. It's one that people actually measure. They don't measure cultures. All right. So I've got society is 50% one group, 40% another group, 10% group 3. Our policing overrepresents group 1. Okay. So how am I going to figure this out? I'm going to look at my hiring practices over time, see how many officers I hire and what kind of time period, and I'm going to figure out how quickly I want to get these 2 numbers, sets of numbers, to reflect one another. That's going to determine the specific numbers I set in place for hiring, right? I'm going to look to increase the police force, the group 2's police force presence by X number of percent or X number of people over every number of years until it reaches your goal, right? It's a very noble thing to do, trying to do something good for everybody, but you're forgetting something. What are we forgetting here? This is the biggest source of hiring frustrations within policing that I've encountered, like at the individual level when I've been talking with officers about this. It's really interesting when you put it this way, all of a sudden it just snaps and it's like, oh, we did forget something in this. Okay. We have society and we have the organization. We want them to reflect. Did we lose anything in doing this?
Potentially, it's good to try to hire people that reflect the community that serve in, but you also risk losing quality candidates just based off their race or
Yes.
culture.
No one ever provides any measures for this. Who's applying for what? Right here, the pool. That's in between here and here before you ever even get into the organization. Who said that they're willing to do it? Right? That's why you'll see in Dallas, Texas, 10 years ago, I forget the name of the chief there, making calls like, if you think there's a problem and you want to do something about it, apply. We pay really good. And he was being honest, they do. They pay really good. It is an extremely dangerous job. And with that video you saw earlier, you know why they pay so good, right? Those things are starting to balance out a little bit, maybe. But then you have that issue right here, because tied to that pool is going to be tied into this thing right here again. Duty. Those who apply are those who are wanting to help. Nothing I've said so far is negative. What's negative? Think about it a little bit deeper. There's nothing negative. Why is it sometimes it comes negative? It's a process thing.
Hey, Dr. Hurst, I'm gonna have to leave a couple minutes early. I've got a doctor's appointment.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see you go. I'll get this video up. It may take me a week, so I'll probably run into the upper limit for number of videos I can upload to YouTube today. But I'll try to get all the videos out in the next couple of days. The thing's gotten a little bit easier. So
before I leave, a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know when you'll probably by any chance have time to grade the homework assignment that we've turned in?
Yes, that'll be within the next, probably, let's see, today's Wednesday, so probably by Friday. I don't have anything big coming up in the immediate, so I can actually sit down and focus on some work for the next couple of days. I'll be able to get a whole chunk of stuff done. It's gonna be great. I've actually set up with a number of things for a number of different classes, but more on that as we go. Yeah, I'm doing my scheming in the background is what it is. Those plans will be revealed when they're ready. Yes, so I would expect those to be in by about Friday. I'll look at that. The quizzes, if I've had quizzes in here, those grade automatically. And if you've taken more than one, it should update with the highest grade. If it doesn't, let me know, because that means I clicked one wrong button. If the quiz or exam, we did review last time, I'll get that video up probably first thing after this, not this class, but probably by about 3 o'clock. So basically in class until about then. And then the exam itself is up, but make sure you go watch the review if you weren't in class last time, because we talked about the concepts that were involved, you know, what kinds of things to expect there, so you're ready for it. You only have 90 minutes for that exam though, but you have it open for an entire week, because I forgot to open it on Monday. I extended that deadline out to 1 week from today. Cool.
Cool. Thank you. All right. You have a good day.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So here's where it comes in. You've got 2 groups of people involved in this, actually more than that. You have the pool itself, and then you have those who are making the, we'll just say decision makers, because it's going to come across different levels. And I'm only going to deal with the initial ones, the ones who set the priorities for what's needed for a position. So these are the ones who dictate the priorities in terms of the factors that we weigh in making the decision to make the hiring. So these are going to be your upper level administrators kind of things, not necessarily those who are involved in the actual hiring themselves, right? Or the interview thing. So you got top kind of thing, and then you have those at the bottom, those who are trying to get in, right? So depending on how different those numbers were from the get-go, like I said, Ferguson, Missouri is something like 80% Black population, 80% white police force. Big problem there. Where you run into issues is how much of a factor is something like that a determinant for who gets in and who doesn't, right? And what that means is where do you put that in the list of things that you need to have to get in, right? You say this demographic thing or this cultural thing, or as anything they can spin out that's not directly related to someone's, what would you say, innate abilities to do a job kind of thing. Any of those other stuff that people bring with them. Maybe it's the ideas in their head. Maybe it's the color of their skin. Maybe it's the religion that they have. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever it is that they're trying to make reflective here. Where do you put that in your list of priorities, whether that's number 1 or number 5? That's the big thing. If that racial or cultural or whatever it is, issue, that's a reading the word, topical issue is such an issue that you make it your number 1 priority, the message you send here is much different than having it anywhere else, because the ultimate determinant of whether a person gets into that position is here at that issue. So you've made the problem worse, not better, because everyone who's here in this pool and waiting will see that. And that negativity will spread much faster because that's a much bigger group of people. And so it's like you've got to take into account how many different groups there are in the process too. And so since we're not looking at the demographics of these pools to begin with, we're not always communicating this way. So we are looking at them, but at the individual level, never aggregating across multiple police departments, that kind of thing. It's not, well, I shouldn't say never, but largely don't do that. You look at those breakdowns for the pool and how they compare to those who were hired and those that are on the streets in society, those are going to be a different thing too. As we start dealing with recruitment procedures in this, that's where you can address them. To some degree we do, depending on, well, specific needs, that kind of thing. Let's see here. What does this say next? Career perspective, officers use of firm understanding career officers careers. Pay close attention to all stages of officer career. That really doesn't tell me anything. Basically, what they're saying there is looking at it from an overall process. They want you to consider time. I'm showing you processes that are bound to cross time too. This thing right here, the people involved, the fact we don't communicate that's something that people don't understand. So they will see, hey, there is a big change from here to here, never realizing the steps involved that led to those changes, right? And that's going to be from all perspectives. Those in the pool, those not in the pool, those at the top in the system, those outside. Okay. That's process stuff. That's one of those things that's like where you find it at its worst. It can be, I've seen this before where it's been, we have a position that's opened up 1 rank above. No, you cannot even apply for it because we're holding this position for someone to apply for it from that group, meaning you don't even get to apply. That's how much of a priority can be in some places. But when they do it like that, is that sending it's that much of a need, or that position isn't needed? Because that's money that's taken from people to fund that position that is going to remain open for a set number of months, maybe years. In some instances, they'll leave it open, waiting for someone to apply for it. So that way they can start to meet those metrics rather than focusing on the job itself. That's one of the problems in this thing. Just one. Okay. Stereotypes. I love stereotypes. Nothing more ridiculous than stereotypes. Why? If you see someone who breaks the stereotype, it's funny. If you see someone who meets a stereotype, it can be funny or it can be offensive. It's one of those things that's really interesting. I'll usually like to start talking about, anytime we get into stereotypes, I start to talk about their flexibility over time because people don't see that. That's something that spans generations and most people don't read enough to see that. It'd be like talking about, usually what I do is I pick on one particular group that's going to be Asian, the Asian population. So if you look at the ways in which they came into this country, it was their poor migrant workers that came in. With them, they brought drugs. It's going to be opium. And if you look at the ways in which they were stereotyped, bad, very, very bad, very negative, very racist. My favorite word that was used is actually an old defunct anthropological term. It's got a few different ties, but it's Mongoloid. I think it's spelled correctly. Basically, what you're saying there is that when you hear this used by someone, the only time I've ever heard it used was in offensive ways. It's usually surrounded by curses towards somebody. And what they were trying to say was that person was acting unevolved. Right? This person's basically a cretin, not human, subhuman kind of thing. Okay? So, to some degree, subhuman. Unintelligent. Criminal. And then if you contrast that with the stereotypes given to the Asian population today, the only negative one you get is about driving. Right? That's how much those things change. It takes time, but they do change. Here, they'll start going into some of those stereotypes for police. Let's see. Poorly educated, untrained, prejudicial, brutal, and corrupt, the negative ones. Positive side, positive ones, heroes. Right? What do you get when you get police officers in whole as a whole? You get both. Right? Personnel process. Police chiefs do not completely control the recruitment selection of new officers. No. Personnel decisions shared with other governmental agencies. Yes, the funding comes from the public side, so to some degree they have some control over that. When you start getting into the processes themselves, as you move up, you move away from the specific decision, but also you increase responsibility. It's a really weird thing that goes on. It's like direct control versus indirect control. The more indirect it is, the sort of like keys. If you have keys, if you've got a whole bunch of keys, you can access a whole bunch of things. If you only need one key, that might mean that you have no access to something. That might also mean that you only need one key because everything will open for that one key. That kind of thing. Personnel decisions, we just said that. Recruiting processes. Okay, first off, minimum job qualifications need to be identified. Recruitment effort is its own effort. Sometimes it's passive, sometimes it's active. It can be as passive as just waiting for the good little people to come and apply. Sometimes it's as active as putting up a billboard. Sometimes it's as active as going somewhere, meeting with someone. That kind of thing. Those recruitment procedures, those are how you start to check change. Check, because you can check candidate pool at any point in time. That's how you start to affect those in the messaging. Okay. Applicants' decision to apply for a job. Yeah. Screening of applicants, selection of new recruits. So when someone applies, you start screening them and selecting who goes where, that kind of thing. Some will go away. In this field, it's one of those things where you can actually see, sometimes you'll have people who repeatedly apply and they'll after time, they'll find that will to get in. And so that's in there too. Minimum qualifications. This is where it gets interesting. You need to be 21. You need to be a certain height. And you need to be a certain weight. Yeah, that seems sexist to me. I'm just making a joke. What it is, here's where we start getting into, I think I talked about it last time, bona fide qualifications, bona fide, I forget there's a term for it, but it's bona fide. Those kind of qualifications are required as a direct result of the type of position it is. So they can be used. Otherwise, you'd be in violation of a number of things, like the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's the big one because like you need to be able to make reasonable accommodations for most jobs. Some jobs can't have any of those accommodations. That's this one, at least at the current time. As technology develops, who knows? Okay, recruiting officers. You need a high school diploma and a criminal record. No criminal record. Your criminal record goes military. No, I'm just kidding. It says crime of any sort should automatically disqualify an applicant because no ethics. And then today's drug use. Right? So if you have someone, they need to be as clean as the driven snow. How many people are? Most aren't, right? You look at that drug, that's the big one because what is it they say? back whenever I was your age, I think it was like half of the population had used drugs at some point in time. For some reason, I don't think that number's decreased any. Right? And so that's going to be a growing problem. You've seen a number of jurisdictions that dial back on that. You just have to be a not current user, that kind of thing. What does that actually start to introduce in there? Maybe it's a person who's had more experiences and are more well-rounded. Maybe it's someone who's had more experiences and they're off kilter, right? And that's going to be some of those problems that come with these issues. Okay. Residency requirements. Those will come up in certain areas too. Not all jurisdictions do that, but some that do. What it is they want you to be tied into the area that you are policing, so people know you and that you're personally invested. That's that whole tenet, the central idea to decentralization. That you're a citizen too, right? We're all just citizens here. We don't want to use authority over other people. We don't want to do that. We just sometimes have no other choice. Okay. Recent training changes here. Minimum standards are dropping. That'd be like me talking about higher education, the use of the GRE. Minimum standards are dropping everywhere. Why is that? If I were to have a conclusive statement that I would want to look to see and support later, I would be under the impression it's probably this thing right here. It's that sense of duty. People still have it, but it's going to conflict with the amount of risk there and the oversight, right? And the negativity given to it. You might be beaten to death just for wearing the suit. Like, ooh, yeah. That's gonna be a little bit of a hurdle to get people over. Okay, recruitment effort. It's going to be dependent on, well, it's going to determine the size and quality of applicant pools. That's going to be determined on the number of people in the area and the amount of money, largely. Open recruitment efforts includes advertising required by law today. They don't want to be closed. All right. That's something else you can do in organizations is you can advertise for a job out openly, publicly, or within the organization itself. If you do that, you do an internal hire only. That's a different process. And so you don't want to necessarily do that here because we want society in here. We want the public, not those who seek power. But with that, we have gone well past the time we need to be here. I'm going to let you guys go and you have a great day. We'll pick up with that next time. If you guys have any questions, feel free to speak now or you can catch me at another time. And I'll see you all on Monday. You have a great day. Bye.